Thank you for making me sound so good. I also want to confess there has been a little bit of confusion because when Kay asked for a guest speaker, she said, we're looking for someone that has the brilliance of Einstein and the physique of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Unfortunately, you get the physique of Einstein and the brilliance of Arnold Schwarzenegger today. But nonetheless, we are here today to remember and to honor those who have given all. I want to share some numbers with you because I want you to understand going into this that this is no small thing. That throughout our history in the United States, there have been about 1.3 million people who have lost their lives in war. The most expensive cost of life was the Civil War, 620,000 people, because every casualty, every death was us. We begin to realize that war is a terrible thing. War is expensive in life, in liberty, in cost. War has wounds that continue on that sometimes you can't see. War is not something that we desire. Yet, when war comes, there are those who are willing to stand, and some gave all. That's who we're here to remember today and to honor today. So my task is threefold. We want to remember, we want to honor, and it all starts with punctuation. And you're thinking I'm off my rocker. I'm just trying to make all my high school English teachers proud. But the punctuation is the key to the whole thing. But before I do that, it's easy to say numbers and stats. 1.3 million people have given their lives with the idea that this thing called freedom was somehow worthwhile passing on. But numbers don't do it for you. There's no personal connection. Of some of you, there are. But what I want to do this morning is to establish a personal connection for all of you. And to do that, I want to tell you about my friend Clay. Clay was a pilot's pilot. He was the instructor pilot of instructor pilots. For those of you of the older generation, he kind of looked like Steve Canyon. For those of you of the middle generation, he kind of looked like Brad Pitt. For those of you of the younger generation, I can't help you. But Clay was the man. And Clay had a personal war on mediocrity. I know this because he shared this often. He was not a shrinking violet. He told everybody how he felt. We were instructor pilots together in a squadron and happened to be in the same flight, so I was around him a lot. I got to hear his spiel often. And often he would come in, and when people were kind of dragging or doing things halfway, he would say, look, we're part of the finest Air Force the world has ever known. We're here to bring in the next generation of pilots. That's why we're here training them. So let's be great today. How awesome is that? Everybody should have one of those people in your lives. That was Clay. Clay would, I remember one particular day we had a weather recall, which means it's getting bad, boys, get back home, and we were in a hurry. I was second last to land, and it was terrible. The winds were terrible, they were picking up, the rain was coming in, all the bad things. If you're a pilot, you know. If you're not, just imagine. It's one of those landings where the first thing you want to do is get out and kiss the ground. I was the second to last to land, and that was the hardest landing I've ever had. But I wasn't the last to land. Clay was the last to land, and by the time we got shut down and the canopy raised, it was raining sideways, and it was cold rain. This was in Colorado. We ran as quickly as we could to the squadron. Didn't matter, we were soaked to the bone, my student and I. And we got inside, and I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be an easier way to make a living. Like, why am I'm questioning my life choices at this point, right? And all of a sudden, as we're putting our equipment away, the door just wings wide open, and it wasn't on purpose. It was the wind that had taken it, and Clay and his student come in. Now, Clay, who looks like Steve Canyon or Brad Pitt, or use your imagination, normally perfectly coiffed hair, walks in, bigger than life. His hair is like all sideways. He's dripping wet. He goes, man, can you believe they pay us to do this? See, that was Clay. That was Clay. He was the guy that always encouraged, always called us to be something more than we were. And maybe that's why his death hit us so hard. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. I tell you that because I want this to be personal for you. I don't want this to be about numbers. And I don't want to be just about remembrance. I want it to be about honoring. I want you to do something with this. I want this to matter. Maybe more than it did when we came in. See, the other thing about Clay is he would repeatedly encourage us and challenge us and ask us to be more, not just for our sakes, but for the next generation. I want to do the same this morning. One of Clay's wars against mediocrity was his journal, and I know this because they read it at his memorial service. And he said, I don't know what I will do in life, but I know this. Let me give you the G-rated version. I will do it completely, not halfway. I will do it to the best of my ability. And I will encourage others to do the same. And that was Clay. I remember sitting, whenever you have an accident, I remember sitting in the squadron. They ground everyone for a few days because they've got to figure out if it was a mechanical problem, pilot error, all the investigations. So there was nothing for us to do but sit and look at each other for a week. I don't know if you know anything about pilots, but they get a little grumpy when they don't get to fly. We were already down. We had lost our best friend. I remember it was Friday, and we were scheduled to fly Monday. The investigation was complete. But nobody was really in the mood. We were sitting there with our heads hanging low and thinking, well, it's not going to be the same without Clay. And then one of the guys said, you know, what would Clay say if he were sitting here and he saw this? Again, I'll give you the G-rated version. So what are you guys doing, you knuckleheads? I'm going to kick you in the backside, get you up out of your seat. This is a perfect day to fly. You should be out there flying. What are you doing sitting here? Yeah, that's exactly what he would have said. And that's exactly what it took to break us out of our funk and get ready to go again. See, even in Clay's absence, his spirit was still there. And that's what the essence of this day is. Even in absence, that spirit is still here. Fast forward a little bit in life, I began to work with a nonprofit that we worked with veterans that were struggling to assimilate back into civilian life, some in the more severe cases struggling with PTSD. And I began to use Clay's technique. It's like, I understand that you're lost. I understand that you're looking for purpose. I understand that you're missing your buddies, some of whom did not make it back. But let me ask you this. What would they say right now to you if they saw how you were living? And so I developed this thing with punctuation. So you knew it was going to come together, right, at some point. I said, would your buddies look at the life that you're leading right now, honoring their sacrifice? Would they say, I died for this? ? Or would they say, I died for this! ! See, how you live your life, whether you live in the question mark or the exclamation point, makes all the difference in whether we honor that sacrifice or not. Every day since that day, I have been determined to say, if Clay were to see me today, he would have no questions. He would say, yes, I died for that! ! See, that's how we honor those who have fallen. Whatever it is that you're missing, whether you know them personally or not, 1.3 million people thought that freedom was worthwhile handing to you. Will you live in the question mark, or will you live in the exclamation point? It makes all the difference. As I began to experience a little bit more of that, I began to feel a call to ministry, and I began to think, if Clay could ask that after the sacrifice that he made, how much more so then can Jesus Christ ask the same thing? I died for this? Or yes, I died for this. See, whether you live your life because of a veteran or because of a fallen, or whether you live your life for Christ, the same question applies. Will you live by the question mark, or by the exclamation point. Furthermore, in Galatians, Paul writes this idea of freedom in its proper use. He says, don't use your freedom for personal gain. Use your freedom in service to others. You see, there's the key to really honoring. I don't want to just remember. I want to honor. I want this to mean something to all of us. And so what I encourage you to do is to live by the exclamation point, not the question. I encourage you to use the freedom that we have been handed by 1.3 million people on our side alone and by Jesus Christ himself, not for selfish gain, but to serve others. And I promise you, if we live our lives in such a way that all those who have gone before us and even Jesus Christ himself can say, yes, I died for this, then we will have done a great thing in remembering and honoring and using punctuation properly. So my challenge to you this morning is to ask, how will you use your freedom? This freedom that has been handed down by guys like Clay. 1.3 million men and women have handed this gift. How will you serve? Maybe you could serve in a school. How many teachers are here today? Thank you for what you do. You're shaping the next generation. If you ask me, all the professional sports leagues and the teachers should trade salaries. That's the way that should work. Let's show who's really valuable in this society. You know, never once in my 21-year career did I go, gosh, I wish I had an NFL player right beside me right now. Never. I had the men and women who are willing to put it on the line. This is no game. This is real life. And teachers, you shape the next generation. And if you're complaining or wondering, why aren't the schools doing a better job? How come they're not teaching these students? Well, we're part of the problem then. Let's get out there and volunteer. Let's make our presence known. Let's use our freedom for something, not for self. How many people in government are here today? Say, you can't hide, you're in the front row. Thank you for what you do. Because I've seen a world where the rule of law does not exist. It's not good. It's not the world that I want for my children or my grandchildren. And if we complain that we don't like the way things are going, then guess what? We're part of the problem. How many people got out to vote? Don't raise your hands. I'm not trying to judge. I'm trying to encourage. We can't sit at the sidelines and snipe about what's not being done when we refuse to use the gift of freedom that we've been given to serve others. If you want to see a difference, be the difference. How many people are parents here? Oh, you have the toughest job of all. As I was heard it described once, the toughest job you'll ever love. And it's a job that never goes away. I have 3 adult daughters. They still act like kids. And I'm glad for it. I'm glad to see it when they get together. But parents, you literally, of all people, have the most time, potentially, have the most time with that child than anyone else. Now, whether you use that time, that's up to you. Whether you use that time wisely, that's up to you. But what I'm saying is, take this gift of freedom and serve others. Don't be content to serve self. Don't be apathetic of the 1.3 million people that have passed this gift to you and me. If we live our lives so that all those who have gone before us and Jesus Christ himself can say, yes, I died for this, then we have remembered, we have honored, and we have used punctuation correctly. And if we all do that, my work here is done. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the things that you have done. And thank you for the things that you will do. Thank you. Thank you.